The gleaming chandeliers of the Grand Plaza Hotel cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as three young men in designer suits lounged in the lobby. Born into wealth and privilege, these 20-somethings had never known a day of genuine hardship. They were regulars at the hotel's exclusive rooftop bar, where they spent their evenings sipping overpriced cocktails and looking down at the city below, both literally and figuratively. On this particular evening, their attention was drawn to a tall, muscular man who walked through the revolving doors. Despite his impressive physical presence, he was dressed simply in a plain black t-shirt and jeans. The man's quiet confidence and humble demeanor stood in stark contrast to the ornate surroundings of the five-star hotel. The youngest of the wealthy trio, Chen, nudged his friends and smirked. "Look at this guy. Probably took a wrong turn looking for the gym." His companions, Raj and David, snickered at the comment, their laughter echoing across the marble floor. The man in question was none other than Big Shaq, though these privileged young men didn't recognize him. A self-made millionaire who had built his fortune from nothing, Shaq had learned early in life that true worth wasn't measured by designer labels or flashy displays of wealth. He had grown up in a small apartment above his parents' corner store, watching them work tirelessly to provide for their family. Those humble beginnings had taught him the value of hard work and the importance of staying grounded, even after achieving success. As Shaq approached the front desk, the trio's comments grew louder and more pointed. "Hey, buddy," called out David, his voice dripping with condescension, "I think you're in the wrong place. The budget motel is down the street." Shaq turned slowly, his face remaining neutral as he studied the three young men. He had encountered their type before, people who measured others by the price tags on their clothes rather than the content of their character. Instead of responding to their taunts, he simply turned back to the receptionist and continued his conversation. This apparent dismissal only served to further agitate the wealthy young men. Raj stood up, straightening his custom-tailored jacket. "Don't ignore us, big guy. This isn't the kind of place that takes walk-ins from the street. You need a reservation, and standards." The hotel staff at the desk shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the brewing tension. The head receptionist, Mrs. Zhang, who had worked at the Grand Plaza for over 2 decades, watched the scene unfold with growing concern. She had seen countless displays of wealth and privilege, but something about this particular situation felt different. Shaq finished his conversation with the receptionist and turned to face the three young men. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm and measured. "You know, gentlemen, I've found that life has a funny way of teaching us lessons when we least expect them. Sometimes the person you're looking down on today might be signing your paycheck tomorrow." Chen scoffed at this, rising to join his friends. "Is that supposed to be some kind of threat? Do you even know who we are? Our families practically own this city." A slight smile crossed Shaq's face as he reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. The three young men tensed, expecting confrontation, but instead, Shaq withdrew a simple business card and handed it to Mrs. Zhang. "Please make sure everything is in order for tomorrow's meeting," he said quietly. Mrs. Zhang's eyes widened as she read the card, and she immediately straightened up. "Of course, Mr. Johnson. We'll have everything prepared for the ownership transition meeting first thing in the morning." The color drained from the three young men's faces as realization slowly dawned on them. The man they had been mocking wasn't just another hotel guest, he was the buyer who had been negotiating to purchase the entire Grand Plaza hotel chain. The lobby fell silent as other guests and staff members who had been pretending not to watch the confrontation now turned to stare openly. Shaq's words from moments before echoed in the minds of the three young men, taking on an entirely new meaning. Rather than gloating over their embarrassment, Shaq simply nodded to them as he walked toward the elevator. "Gentlemen, I look forward to making some changes around here. Starting with our guest behavior policy." His words weren't delivered as a threat, but as a simple statement of fact. As the elevator doors closed behind him, the three young men stood frozen in place, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. They had just learned a valuable lesson about judging others based on appearances, though the teaching had come at the cost of their own dignity. The story of what happened that evening in the Grand Plaza Hotel lobby quickly spread throughout the city's business community. It served as a powerful reminder that true success isn't about the clothes you wear or the way you flaunt your wealth, it's about character, integrity, and treating others with respect, regardless of their appearance or social status. The next morning dawned bright and clear over the Grand Plaza Hotel. The three young men who had caused such a scene the previous evening hadn't slept well, each tossing and turning as they replayed their embarrassing encounter with Big Shaq. They had arrived early at the hotel, dressed even more immaculately than usual, hoping to somehow make amends for their behavior. The lobby buzzed with activity as hotel staff prepared for the ownership transition meeting. Businesspeople in sharp suits streamed through the revolving doors, many of them representing various stakeholders in the hotel chain. Chen, Raj, and David huddled near the coffee shop, trying to appear invisible, a new experience for young men who usually demanded to be the center of attention. Mrs. Zhang, the head receptionist, watched them with a mixture of sympathy and satisfaction. In her 20 years at the Grand Plaza, she had observed countless displays of arrogance from wealthy guests, but rarely had she seen such a dramatic reversal of fortune. As she organized the meeting room preparations, she couldn't help but think about how this story would be told and retold among the hotel staff for years to come. Big Shaq arrived precisely at 9 a.m., but this time he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that spoke of quiet sophistication. The transformation in his appearance seemed to underscore the lesson from the previous evening: appearances could be deceiving, and snap judgments often led to embarrassing mistakes. As he crossed the lobby, heads turned in his direction. Word had spread quickly about the previous evening's encounter, and now everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of the man who had taught such a memorable lesson in humility. The three young men shifted uncomfortably as he approached, but to their surprise, Shaq stopped directly in front of them. "Good morning, gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the same calm authority as the night before. "I wonder if you might join us for the meeting? I think you could offer some valuable perspective on the guest experience here at the Grand Plaza." The trio exchanged confused glances. This wasn't the reception they had expected. Where was the humiliation? The angry rebuke? The public dressing down they had spent all night dreading? Inside the meeting room, Shaq introduced them to the board members and executives present. "These young men provided me with some interesting insights last night about how our hotel is perceived by different segments of our clientele," he said, somehow managing to transform their rude behavior into a constructive market research exercise. As the meeting progressed, Shaq outlined his vision for the hotel chain. He spoke about creating an environment of genuine hospitality, where every guest would feel welcomed regardless of their appearance or background. He described his own experiences as a traveler, sometimes being judged by his casual dress when he preferred to travel comfortably rather than flashily. Success in the hospitality industry, he explained, isn't just about luxury amenities or exclusive services. It's about making every single person who walks through those doors feel valued and respected. Sometimes, the most valuable guests aren't the ones wearing designer labels or flashing expensive watches. The three young men found themselves nodding along, their earlier shame gradually transforming into understanding. They began to see the hotel, and their own behavior, through new eyes. During a break in the meeting, Raj gathered his courage and approached Shaq. "Sir," he began, his voice uncharacteristically humble, "we owe you an apology for last night. We were completely out of line." Shaq's response surprised him. "You know what impressed me most about last night?" he asked. "Not one of you tried to buy your way out of the situation. You didn't throw around your family names or try to bribe anyone to sweep it under the rug. That tells me there's hope." Chen and David joined them, and soon all three young men were engaged in a genuine conversation with Shaq about their families' businesses and their own aspirations. They learned that before building his fortune, Shaq had worked as a hotel bellboy, learning the hospitality industry from the ground up. That experience was invaluable, he told them. It taught me that every role in a hotel is essential, and every guest's experience matters. Success isn't just about making money, it's about creating value for others. As the meeting resumed, Shaq did something unexpected. He announced that he wanted to create a young professionals advisory board for the hotel chain, and he invited the 3 young men to be its first members. Sometimes, he said to the surprised board members, our harshest critics can become our most valuable advisors, if we're willing to listen and they're willing to learn. The rest of the meeting focused on practical matters, contracts, transitions, and future plans. But for Chen, Raj, and David, something fundamental had shifted. They had walked into the hotel the previous evening as entitled young men who judged others by their appearances. Now, they were beginning to understand that true leadership wasn't about asserting superiority, but about recognizing the value in every person. As the meeting concluded, Shaq pulled the 3 aside one last time. The advisory board position isn't just a gesture, he told them seriously. I expect you to work hard, learn the business from all angles, and help us create a truly inclusive luxury experience. Can I count on you? Looking into his eyes, they could see that this was more than just a business opportunity, it was a chance at redemption, at personal growth, and at proving they could be more than just rich boys with attitude problems. 2 weeks after the ownership transition, the Grand Plaza Hotel was already experiencing subtle but significant changes. Big Shaq had implemented his vision of inclusive luxury with remarkable speed, and the 3 young men, Chen, Raj, and David, found themselves deeply involved in the transformation process, though not in the way they had initially imagined. Their first task as members of the Young Professionals Advisory Board wasn't attending high-level meetings or making executive decisions. Instead, Shaq had arranged for them to work alongside various hotel staff members, starting from the ground up. Today marked their 5th day of hands-on experience, and they were beginning to see the hotel industry through entirely new eyes. Chen found himself working alongside the housekeeping staff, making beds and cleaning rooms. His designer clothes had been replaced by a standard hotel uniform, and his manicured hands were learning the meaning of real work. Initially, he had been horrified at the assignment, but after just a few days, he had gained a profound respect for the staff's dedication and attention to detail. You missed a spot, said Mrs. Lee, his supervisor, pointing to a corner of the bathroom mirror. She had been working at the hotel for 15 years and took immense pride in her work. Chen, who had never cleaned anything in his life before this week, carefully wiped the mirror again until it sparkled. The smile of approval from Mrs. Lee gave him an unexpected sense of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Raj was stationed at the front desk, working under Mrs. Zhang's watchful eye. He had assumed that checking guests in and out would be simple, but he quickly learned that it required a complex blend of technical skills, problem-solving abilities, and most importantly, emotional intelligence. Remember, Mrs. Zhang coached him as he dealt with a particularly demanding guest. Every person who walks through that door has a story. Some are tired from long flights, others are stressed about business meetings, and some are here for special occasions. Your job is to make them all feel welcomed and valued. David had been assigned to the kitchen and restaurant service team, where he was learning the intricate dance of fine dining service. The head chef, Mr. Wong, ran his kitchen with military precision, and David found himself both intimidated and inspired by the man's leadership style. In this kitchen, Mr. Wong had told him on his first day, it doesn't matter if your father owns half the city or if you just started your first job. What matters is your dedication, your attention to detail, and your ability to work as part of a team. One evening, as the 3 friends gathered in the staff break room during their dinner break, they reflected on how much their perspectives had changed in just 2 weeks. Their designer watches had been replaced by simple timepieces that could withstand the rigors of their new duties, and their perfectly styled hair had given way to more practical looks. You know what's crazy? David said, taking a bite of the staff meal that he had helped prepare. Last month, I wouldn't have been caught dead eating in a break room. Now, this feels more real than any of those fancy restaurants we used to frequent. Chen nodded, massaging his shoulders, sore from a day of physical work. Yesterday, I found myself defending one of the housekeepers when a guest was being unreasonable. Me. The same guy who used to snap his fingers to get service. Speaking of unreasonable guests, Raj added, you won't believe what happened at the front desk today. This guy walked in wearing clothes that probably cost more than my car, took one look at my trainee badge, and demanded to speak to a real employee. He chuckled. 2 weeks ago, that could have been any one of us. Their conversation was interrupted by Big Shaq, who had been quietly observing from the break room doorway. Interesting how perspective changes when you walk in someone else's shoes, isn't it? He said, entering the room and pulling up a chair. The three young men straightened up instinctively, but Shaq waved away their formality. No need for that here. We're all just people doing our jobs. He reached for a cup of coffee from the simple coffee maker, the same one used by all the staff. Tell me what you've learned so far. For the next hour, they shared their experiences, insights, and the many humbling moments they'd encountered. Shaq listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking questions that made them think even deeper about their experiences. Sir, Chen finally asked, how long do you plan to have us working these entry-level positions? Shaq's response was thoughtful. That depends on you. The positions you're in right now, they're not punishment or just a learning exercise. These are the foundation of our entire operation. Every decision we make at the executive level affects the people doing these jobs, and every interaction they have with guests affects our success. He stood up, placing his empty coffee cup in the break room sink and washing it himself, a small action that spoke volumes. Next week, we'll start having you rotate through different departments. But remember this, true leadership isn't about being above others, it's about understanding and supporting every person who contributes to our success. As Shaq left the break room, the three friends sat in contemplative silence. Through the break room window, they could see the city lights twinkling below, the same view they used to enjoy from the rooftop bar. But now, they saw it differently. Each light represented people, working people, tired people, hopeful people, all of whom deserved respect, regardless of their position or appearance. You know what's really mind-blowing? Raj said quietly. We used to think we were better than everyone else because of our family's success. But Shaq, he's richer than all our families combined, and he treats everyone like they're valuable. That's probably why he's successful, David replied, gathering his dishes to return to the kitchen. He understands something we're just starting to learn, real success isn't about what you have, it's about how you treat others. 1 month into their new roles at the Grand Plaza Hotel, Chen, Raj, and David faced their biggest challenge yet. The hotel was preparing to host an international business conference, and Big Shaq had put them in charge of ensuring everything ran smoothly. It would be their first real test as leaders, but with a twist they hadn't expected. You'll be coordinating the event, Shaq had told them, but you'll also be working alongside the staff during the conference. I want you to experience both sides, the planning and the execution. His eyes had twinkled with amusement at their nervous expressions. Consider it your graduation test. The conference would bring together some of the most influential business leaders in the country, including, ironically, some of their own family members. The thought of serving their parents, colleagues and friends while wearing staff uniforms had once been their worst nightmare. Now, it felt like an opportunity to prove how much they'd grown. The morning of the conference arrived with a series of unexpected challenges. A storm had delayed several flights, throwing off the carefully planned schedule. The conference room's air conditioning was acting up, and to make matters worse, one of the keynote speakers had arrived with twice the number of assistants they'd planned for. Chen found himself in the thick of the action, directing the housekeeping team to prepare additional rooms while personally helping to move extra chairs into the conference area. His muscles, now stronger from weeks of physical work, barely registered the task that would have exhausted him a month ago. "Never thought I'd see the day," Mrs. Lee commented with pride as she watched him efficiently organizing the team. "You've come a long way from that first day when you didn't know which end of the vacuum to hold." Meanwhile, Raj was at the front desk, calmly handling the influx of delayed guests. His previous experiences with Mrs. Zhang had taught him how to maintain composure under pressure. When a particularly irate business executive began berating him about the wait, Raj handled the situation with a grace that impressed even the veteran staff members. "Sir," he said to the angry guest, "I understand your frustration, and I assure you we're doing everything possible to expedite the check-in process. Would you like to enjoy a complimentary drink in our lounge while we prepare your room?" His genuine concern and professional demeanor quickly diffused the situation. David was coordinating with the kitchen team, solving a last-minute crisis when they discovered that one of the keynote speakers had dietary restrictions that hadn't been properly communicated. Instead of panicking, he rolled up his sleeves and worked alongside Mr. Wong to modify the menu. "Pass me those vegetables," Mr. Wong called out, and David smoothly complied, falling into the familiar rhythm they'd developed over the past month. "You know," the chef added with a rare smile, "a month ago you wouldn't have known a julienne from a dice. Now look at you, thinking on your feet like a real chef." The real test came when they spotted their parents among the arriving guests. Chen's father, a prominent real estate developer, did a double-take when he saw his son directing staff members while wearing a hotel uniform. Raj's mother, a famous surgeon, almost didn't recognize him as he professionally guided a group of guests to the conference room. David's parents, who owned a chain of luxury boutiques, watched in amazement as their son competently managed a minor crisis with the catering. During a brief break, the three friends huddled in the staff area, catching their breath. "Did you see my father's face?" Chen laughed. "I thought his eyes were going to pop out when I helped carry his bags." "At least your dad didn't try to slip you a tip like mine did," David grinned. "I had to explain that I wasn't actually a waiter, I was just helping serve because we were short-staffed. My mom kept asking if everything was okay and if she needed to make some calls," Raj added. "She couldn't believe I was doing this by choice." Their moment of levity was interrupted by Big Shaq's arrival. "How are things going?" he asked, though the sparkle in his eyes suggested he already knew the answer. "It's challenging," Chen admitted, "but somehow, it feels right. Like we're finally doing something meaningful." Shaq nodded approvingly. "I've been watching you all day. You've handled every crisis with professionalism and grace. But more importantly, you've done it while working alongside the staff, not just directing from above." The afternoon brought new challenges as the conference got into full swing. The three young men found themselves constantly switching roles. One moment they were making executive decisions about conference logistics, the next they were helping clear tables or directing lost guests to the restrooms. During the evening reception, something remarkable happened. As their parents mingled with other business leaders, the conversation turned to the hotel's impressive service. The three families listened with growing pride as other guests praised the seamless organization and exceptional staff. "Your son," one business leader said to Chen's father, "I saw him earlier. He was helping an elderly guest with her bags while simultaneously coordinating with the event staff. That's the kind of hands-on leadership we need more of in our businesses." Later that evening, after the last conference session had ended and the guests had retired to their rooms, Big Shaq called the three young men to his office. The room, like the man himself, was surprisingly modest for someone of his stature. Today wasn't just about running a conference, he told them. It was about understanding that true leadership means being willing to do any job, no matter how small it might seem. "You've shown that you've learned that lesson well." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Your parents approached me earlier. They wanted to know what I'd done to transform their sons in just 1 month. But we all know the truth, you transformed yourselves. You just needed the opportunity to see the world from a different perspective. The three friends exchanged glances, realizing how far they'd come from that first night when they'd mockingly judged Shaq by his casual clothes. They had begun this journey as entitled young men who thought leadership meant giving orders from above. Now they understood that real leadership meant rolling up your sleeves, working alongside others, and treating everyone with respect, regardless of their position. 2 months after the successful conference, the Grand Plaza Hotel had become a symbol of excellence in the hospitality industry. Word had spread about how the hotel treated every guest with equal respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance or status. But for Chen, Raj, and David, their biggest challenge was yet to come. One morning, Big Shaq called them into his office for an unexpected meeting. The usually calm businessman seemed troubled. "We have a situation," he began, gesturing for them to sit down. "The Silver Leaf Hotel chain is trying to undercut us. They're specifically targeting our most vulnerable employees with better pay offers." The three young men exchanged concerned glances. They had grown close to many staff members over the past months, and the thought of losing them was genuinely disturbing. The Silver Leaf was known for its cutthroat business practices, and its owner, Mr. Blackwood, had a reputation for destroying competition through any means necessary. "But here's the real challenge," Shaq continued. "They're spreading rumors that I'm planning to replace all current staff with automated systems. Some of our employees are worried about their job security." He looked at each of them in turn. "This is where you come in. You've worked alongside these people. They trust you. I need you to help me handle this situation." The gravity of the responsibility wasn't lost on them. 2 months ago, they would have suggested throwing money at the problem or using their family connections to crush the competition. Now, they understood that this was about people's lives and livelihoods. "We should talk to the staff directly," Chen suggested, thinking of Mrs. Lee and her team. "Be transparent about what's happening and show them they're valued here." Raj nodded, remembering his time at the front desk. "Mrs. Zhang always says that honest communication is the foundation of trust. We need to hear their concerns and address them openly. And we should show them concrete evidence of their importance to the hotel," David added, recalling his experiences in the kitchen with Mr. Wong. "Actions speak louder than words." Shaq smiled, clearly pleased with their responses. "Exactly what I was thinking. But remember, this isn't just about keeping our staff. It's about showing them they're part of something bigger than just a job." Over the next few days, the three young men threw themselves into the task. They organized staff meetings, but not in the traditional sense. Instead of formal gatherings in conference rooms, they held small group discussions in the break room, the kitchen, and even while working alongside their colleagues. Chen spent extra hours helping the housekeeping team, using the time to listen to their concerns and share his own experiences of how working with them had changed his life. "Remember when you taught me how to properly make a bed, Mrs. Lee?" he asked during one such conversation. That wasn't just about hospital corners. It was about taking pride in doing things right. Raj worked double shifts at the front desk, ensuring he could speak with staff from different shifts. He shared stories about his own transformation, how he'd gone from looking down on service workers to understanding that they were the heart of the hotel's success. "This isn't just a job," he told them. "We're a family here, and families stick together." David organized a special dinner where kitchen staff could showcase their skills by creating innovative new dishes for the hotel's menu. "Mr. Wong," he said to the chef, "you didn't just teach me about cooking. You taught me about leadership, teamwork, and the importance of every single person in this kitchen." Their efforts didn't go unnoticed. Staff members began sharing their own stories of how the hotel had changed under Big Shaq's ownership. They talked about feeling respected, valued, and part of something meaningful. The rumors spread by Silver Leaf began to lose their power in the face of such genuine connections. The situation came to a head when Mr. Blackwood himself visited the Grand Plaza, supposedly as a guest but clearly on a mission to poach more staff. He was dressed in an expensive suit that screamed power and privilege, reminding the three friends of their own former selves. What happened next became another legendary story in the hotel's growing collection of tales. As Mr. Blackwood attempted to corner a young bellhop with promises of better pay, he found himself surrounded by Chen, Raj, and David, all still in their work uniforms. "Sir," Chen said politely but firmly, "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Before you continue, there's something you should know about this place." "We used to be like you," Raj added, thinking that money was the only thing that mattered in business. "But Big Shaq taught us that true success comes from valuing people," David concluded. "And the people here? They're not just employees. They're family." The young bellhop stood straighter, clearly moved by their defense. Mr. Blackwood looked from one face to another, seemingly thrown off balance by this unexpected confrontation. "You know what's interesting?" Chen continued, his voice carrying across the lobby. "These uniforms we're wearing? We chose to wear them. We could be sitting in fancy offices, but instead, we're here, working alongside the best team in the hospitality industry." What they didn't notice was Big Shaq watching the scene unfold from near the elevators, a proud smile on his face. He had known this moment would come, when their transformation would be truly tested, not by manual labor or challenging tasks, but by having to stand up for the values they had learned. Mr. Blackwood left the hotel that day without a single new recruit. Instead, word spread throughout the industry about how three young men from wealthy families had defended their co-workers while wearing staff uniforms. The story became a symbol of the Grand Plaza's unique culture and values. Later that evening, as the three friends shared their usual break-time meal in the staff room, Big Shaq joined them again. "You know," he said, "when I first met you boys, I saw something beneath all that arrogance, potential. But you've exceeded even my highest expectations." "We learned from the best," David replied, genuinely grateful for the path Shaq had shown them. "The real test of leadership isn't how you handle success," Shaq continued, "it's how you protect and support the people who depend on you. Today, you showed that you understand that completely." 3 months into their journey at the Grand Plaza Hotel, Chen, Raj, and David were facing an unexpected personal challenge. Their families had organized a joint business venture and wanted their sons to take leading roles that would require them to leave their positions at the hotel. The timing couldn't have been more complicated, as Big Shaq had just announced plans to expand the hotel's community outreach programs. The three friends found themselves sitting in their favorite corner of the staff break room, each holding a cup of coffee from the same simple machine they'd once scorned. The weight of their family's expectations hung heavy in the air. "My father doesn't understand," Chen said, staring into his coffee cup. "He thinks working here is just some sort of phase or life lesson. He can't see that we're building something meaningful." Raj nodded, understanding completely. "My mother keeps talking about real business opportunities as if what we're doing here isn't real. Yesterday she asked when I was going to stop playing hotel and start my actual career." "At least your parents are being subtle," David sighed. "Mine straight up told me it's time to stop being a waiter and join the family business. They don't see that we're not just working in a hotel, we're learning how to be better human beings." Their conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Lee, who entered the break room with excitement written all over her face. "Have you boys heard about little Tommy?" she asked, her eyes shining. Tommy was the son of one of the housekeeping staff, a bright 10-year-old who had been diagnosed with a serious illness. The hotel staff had been quietly supporting the family, organizing schedule changes so his mother could attend medical appointments without losing pay. "What's happened?" Chen asked, immediately concerned. Over the past months, he'd helped coordinate many of the staff schedule adjustments for Tommy's mother. "He's been accepted into that experimental treatment program," Mrs. Lee announced. "But..." Her face fell slightly. "The family still needs to cover some expenses that insurance won't pay for." The three friends exchanged glances, and in that moment, they knew exactly what they needed to do. This was an opportunity to put everything they'd learned into action. They immediately sought out Big Shaq, finding him in his office reviewing expansion plans. As they shared their idea, his face broke into an approving smile. "You want to organize a fundraising gala?" he asked, though it was clear he already knew their answer. "Not just any gala," Raj explained eagerly. "We want to do something different. Something that shows what the Grand Plaza is really about." Instead of the usual formal dinner where wealthy people show off, David continued, "We want to create an event that brings together all levels of our community." Chen stepped forward, his eyes bright with purpose. "We'll invite our family's business connections, but we'll have the entire hotel staff involved as equal participants, not servers. Everyone contributes, everyone celebrates." Shaq leaned back in his chair, studying them thoughtfully. "You realize this might not be what your families expect from a charity gala? It could make things more complicated with their plans for you." "That's exactly why we need to do it," Raj responded firmly. "We need to show them that business success and human compassion aren't mutually exclusive." Over the next 2 weeks, the hotel buzzed with preparation. The 3 young men worked tirelessly, combining their newly acquired hands-on experience with their connections to the business world. They were determined to create something unprecedented. Mr. Wong and his kitchen team developed a menu that combined luxury items with comfort food, creating unique fusion dishes that told stories of different cultures coming together. Mrs. Zhang coordinated with local community organizations to ensure broad participation. Mrs. Li and her team transformed the grand ballroom into a space that felt both elegant and welcoming. The night of the gala arrived, and the Grand Plaza Hotel shone with a different kind of luxury, one that sparkled with genuine warmth rather than just expensive decorations. Guests arrived to find something unexpected. Instead of a traditional formal dinner, the event was set up as a series of interactive spaces where people could mingle, share stories, and connect. Hotel staff members weren't just serving, they were hosting, sharing their experiences, and participating fully in the event. Tommy's mother told her story, moving many guests to tears. Local community leaders mixed with business executives. Cultural barriers and social hierarchies seemed to dissolve in the atmosphere of genuine connection. Chen, Raj, and David's families arrived expecting a traditional charity gala. Instead, they found their sons confidently moving through the crowd, not as privileged young men doing charity work, but as dedicated leaders who understood the true meaning of community and service. During the evening, Chen's father watched in amazement as his son expertly guided conversations between a hotel maintenance worker and a real estate developer, helping them discover common ground. Raj's mother observed with growing understanding as her son worked alongside the kitchen staff, explaining to guests how the fusion menu represented the hotel's philosophy of inclusion. David's parents saw their son, whom they'd worried was wasting his potential, masterfully orchestrating an event that brought together people from all walks of life. The highlight of the evening came when Big Shaq took the stage to announce the total funds raised, an amount that far exceeded their goals. But instead of making a grand speech, he called Chen, Raj, and David to join him. "These young men," he began, "came to this hotel as guests who judged others by their appearances. Today, they stand before you as leaders who understand that true wealth isn't measured by what's in your wallet, but by how you treat others and the positive impact you make in their lives." He turned to address the 3 directly, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "Your families want you to pursue traditional business opportunities. But I believe you're already building something far more valuable, a model of business leadership that combines profit with purpose, success with service." The room erupted in applause, led by the hotel staff who had witnessed their transformation firsthand. In that moment, looking out at the diverse crowd of people brought together by their efforts, Chen, Raj, and David felt a sense of accomplishment that no traditional business success could match. Later that night, as they helped the staff with cleanup, something that now came naturally to them, their families approached. The conversations that followed were different from the previous ones about joining the family businesses. For the first time, their parents were asking questions about the hotel's community programs, about Big Shaq's leadership philosophy, and about their son's vision for the future. The success of the charity gala had transformed more than just Tommy's family's life. It had begun to change the entire city's perception of what luxury hospitality could mean. As word spread about the Grand Plaza's unique approach to service and community engagement, something unexpected happened. The hotel's bookings increased dramatically, with guests specifically requesting to experience the inclusive atmosphere they'd heard about. One morning, about a week after the gala, Big Shaq called Chen, Raj, and David to a meeting, but this time in an unusual location, the hotel's rooftop garden, a space they'd once used exclusively for VIP parties. Now, it had been transformed into a community space where hotel staff could take breaks and hotel guests could mingle with locals. "Remember your first night here?" Shaq asked, gesturing to the spot where they'd once mocked him. "You judged me because I wasn't wearing expensive clothes. Now look at yourselves." The three friends glanced down at their hotel uniforms, worn with pride rather than shame. They'd kept wearing them even though Shaq had offered them executive positions with appropriate attire. The uniforms had become a symbol of their transformation. "But that's not why I called you up here," Shaq continued, his expression serious. "I've received some interesting news. The Silver Leaf Hotel chain is struggling. Mr. Blackwood's aggressive tactics have backfired, and they're looking to sell." The three young men exchanged glances, immediately understanding the implications. The Silver Leaf was one of the city's oldest luxury hotels, with a prime location and a rich history. "Here's my proposal," Shaq said, pulling out 3 folders. "I want to buy the Silver Leaf, but I want you 3 to manage its transformation. You'll be in charge of implementing everything you've learned here, but this time, from day one." The responsibility was enormous. The Silver Leaf had over 200 employees, many of whom had worked under Blackwood's cutthroat management style for years. Transforming its culture would be their biggest challenge yet. "There's more," Shaq added, his eyes twinkling. "Your families have approached me. After seeing your work at the gala, they want to invest in this project. They've finally understood what we're building here, a new model of hospitality that proves luxury and humanity can coexist." For the next few days, the three friends immersed themselves in planning while continuing their regular duties. They weren't about to abandon their posts until proper transitions were in place, another lesson they'd learned from their time at the Grand Plaza. Chen spent extra time with Mrs. Lee, discussing how to implement the Grand Plaza's housekeeping standards while respecting existing staff methods. "Remember," she advised, "change isn't about telling people they're wrong. It's about showing them a better way." Raj consulted with Mrs. Zhang about staff training programs. "The first step," she reminded him, "is learning everyone's names and stories. People aren't resources to be managed, they're individuals to be valued." David worked with Mr. Wong to develop plans for the Silver Leaf struggling food service department. "A kitchen is like a community," the chef explained. "When one person succeeds, everyone succeeds. When one person struggles, everyone helps." As they prepared for their new roles, they received an unexpected visit from Mr. Blackwood himself. He had come to the Grand Plaza to meet with Big Shaq about the sale, but he found himself face to face with the 3 young men he'd once tried to undermine. "I don't understand," he admitted, looking around the bustling lobby where guests and staff interacted with natural ease. "Your operational costs must be higher with all these community programs and staff benefits. Your pricing is similar to ours. How do you make it work?" Chen smiled, remembering how he used to think the same way. "Would you like to see something interesting, Mr. Blackwood?" he asked, leading the businessmen toward the front desk. They watched as Raj helped an elderly couple check in. The couple wasn't dressed in luxury brands, but he treated them with the same respect and attention he showed to CEOs and celebrities. The couple's faces lit up with genuine appreciation. "Those guests," David explained, "they'll tell their friends about this experience. They'll come back for special occasions. Their children will want to stay here when they travel. We're not just selling rooms, we're building relationships." And relationships, Chen added, are what build sustainable business success. "We learned that from Big Shaq, but we had to experience it ourselves to truly understand it." Mr. Blackwood looked thoughtful, watching the natural flow of interaction between guests and staff. "I've been in this business for 30 years, he said slowly, "but I've never seen anything quite like this." "That's because you've been in the hotel business," Raj replied kindly. "We're in the people business." Later that evening, as they shared their usual break-time meal in the staff room, they were joined by both Big Shaq and their families. The small room was crowded, but somehow it felt right, business leaders sitting on simple break-room chairs, sharing coffee from the staff machine. "When you first told us about working here," Chen's father said, "I thought it was a phase. Now I see it was an education, one better than any business school could provide." Raj's mother nodded in agreement. "You've learned things we never could have taught you, things we needed to learn ourselves. And now," David's father added, "you're going to take those lessons and use them to transform another hotel. We couldn't be prouder." Big Shaq watched this interaction with satisfaction. "When I bought this hotel," he said, "I had a vision of creating a place where every person would be valued, regardless of their status or appearance. But you three have taken that vision and turned it into something even better, a model that proves doing good is good business." The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Lee, who poked her head into the break room. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a smile, "but Tommy and his mother are here. They want to thank everyone for their support." As they all moved to the lobby to meet Tommy and his family, the three friends exchanged glances. They had come so far from that first night when they'd judged a man by his clothes. Now they were preparing to take everything they'd learned and use it to transform another hotel, to touch more lives, to prove that success and compassion could go hand in hand. The lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel, once just a symbol of luxury, had become a place where barriers broke down, where relationships formed, where lives changed. And it all started because one man in simple clothes had the wisdom to see potential in three arrogant young men, and the patience to help them discover their better selves. 1 year had passed since that fateful night when three privileged young men had mocked Big Shaq in the Grand Plaza Hotel lobby. The hotel's landscape had changed dramatically, but more importantly, so had the lives of everyone involved. The transformation of the Silver Leaf Hotel was nearly complete, and a special celebration was planned to mark both its grand reopening and the anniversary of Chen, Raj, and David's life-changing encounter with Big Shaq. The morning of the celebration began with an unexpected gesture. The three friends arrived at the Silver Leaf wearing their Grand Plaza uniforms one last time. They had spent the past month working alongside their new staff, just as they had done at the Grand Plaza, setting a tone of humble leadership that had already begun to change the hotel's culture. "Remember to hang these in a special place," Big Shaq said, meeting them in the Silver Leaf's newly renovated lobby. "They're not just uniforms, they're reminders of where your journey began." The Silver Leaf's transformation was remarkable. Gone were the cold, intimidating atmospheres of both its past and the typical luxury hotel. Instead, the space radiated warmth and welcome. Staff members moved about their duties with genuine smiles, stopping to chat with guests naturally. The rigid hierarchies of the past had been replaced by a sense of shared purpose. Tommy, now recovered from his successful treatment, was there with his mother. They had been invited as special guests, along with many other members of the Grand Plaza family. The young boy's story had become a symbol of what was possible when people came together to support one another. "Look what I made in art therapy," Tommy exclaimed, proudly showing Chen a drawing of the Grand Plaza Hotel. In his child's perspective, he had drawn every staff member he knew, including the three friends in their uniforms, all with big smiles on their faces. The celebration wasn't a traditional grand opening. Instead of a formal ceremony, they had organized a community fair that took over both hotels. Guests could walk between the Grand Plaza and Silver Leaf, experiencing the unique atmosphere that had made both properties so special. Mr. Wong had trained the Silver Leaf's kitchen staff himself, and now both hotels' culinary teams worked together to provide an incredible variety of dishes that told stories of different cultures and traditions. Mrs. Zhang and Mrs. Li had helped implement training programs that emphasized both technical excellence and human connection. Even Mr. Blackwood was there, though in a very different capacity than anyone had expected. After selling the Silver Leaf, he had asked to stay on as a consultant, wanting to learn this new approach to hospitality. Now he moved through the crowd, chatting with staff members he had once seen as merely resources to be managed. "I've been in this industry for decades," he told a group of guests, "but I never understood what I was missing until I saw how these young men and Big Shaq approached it. They showed me that luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about making everyone feel valued." The three friends' families watched with obvious pride as their sons moved through the celebration, not as privileged heirs but as leaders who had earned their positions through hard work and genuine care for others. The families had become active supporters of the hotel's community initiatives, using their business connections to spread this new model of socially conscious luxury hospitality. As the evening approached, Big Shaq gathered everyone in the Silver Leaf's grand ballroom for a special announcement. The crowd was a beautiful mix of hotel staff, guests, community members, and business leaders, all mingling as equals. "1 year ago," Shaq began, "3 young men judged me by my casual clothes in a hotel lobby. Today, those same young men have helped create something extraordinary." He paused, looking around the room. But this isn't just a story about their transformation. It's a story about what's possible when we look past appearances and treat every person with dignity and respect. He motioned for Chen, Raj, and David to join him on the small stage. As they stood there, memories of their journey flashed through their minds, their first days of cleaning rooms and serving guests, the challenges they'd faced, the relationships they'd built, the lives they'd touched. "Today," Shaq continued, "I'm announcing the creation of the Hospitality Leadership Academy. This program, run jointly by the Grand Plaza and Silver Leaf Hotels, will train the next generation of hotel leaders in the principles we've developed here, that true luxury is about human connection, that real leadership is about service, and that success and compassion can go hand in hand." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause, but Shaq wasn't finished. "And our first 3 instructors," he said with a smile, "will be these young men who have lived this transformation themselves." Chen stepped forward to speak, his voice filled with emotion. "A year ago, we thought we knew everything about success. We measured people by their clothes, their status, their wealth. But thanks to Big Shaq and every person in this room, we learned that true success is about the lives you touch and the positive change you create." Raj added, "We learned that luxury isn't about excluding people, it's about making everyone feel special. It's about creating spaces where genuine connections can form, where barriers break down, and where everyone is valued." David concluded, "And most importantly, we learned that leadership isn't about being above others, it's about working alongside them, understanding their challenges, and helping them succeed." As the celebration continued into the evening, the 3 friends found a quiet moment to return to the Grand Plaza's lobby, the place where their journey had begun. The space looked the same, with its gleaming chandeliers and marble floors, but they saw it with completely different eyes. "It's hard to believe who we were a year ago," Chen reflected, remembering their arrogant behavior. "And it's amazing to think about who we've become," Raj added, watching the natural flow of interaction between guests and staff. "But the best part," David said, "is knowing that this is just the beginning. We have so much more to learn, so many more lives to touch." Big Shaq joined them, still wearing his casual clothes, a reminder that some things hadn't changed, and shouldn't. "You know what I saw in you that first night?" he asked. "I saw myself at your age, before I learned these same lessons. That's why I knew you could change." As they stood there, watching the bustling lobby where their story had begun, they realized that their journey had come full circle. But this wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning. Through their transformation, they had become part of something bigger than themselves, creating a legacy that would continue to touch lives and change perspectives for years to come. The Grand Plaza and Silver Leaf hotels stood as symbols of what was possible when business success and human compassion worked hand in hand. But the real story wasn't about the hotels, it was about the people within them, the connections they formed, and the lives they changed. It was a story that began with a judgment based on appearances and ended with the understanding that true value lies in how we treat each other, regardless of status or circumstance.